You don't have a victim mentality in any part of your life.
You can either be a victim of your circumstances or an architect of your future.
Founder, creator of Mielle Organics hair care, and author of The Glory in Your Story, Monique Rodriguez.
I started the company in 2014 because I've always loved the beauty and hair industry. In 2013, I experienced a traumatic loss of my son. Instead of coming down and depressed, I chose to channel that pain into purpose. The wisdom that I have garnered is not just for me to keep to myself. This book is literally a roadmap for those that are reading to see and reflect the glory in their own story.
Most people don't fall in love with their middle school boyfriend and then it turns out to be their soulmate.
I met him when I was 12. I thought that he was like the most arrogant, this guy is just so full of himself. Like, once we did start dating, I realized that he's a very confident man. When I was younger, I did see qualities in him that I wanted in my dad, if that makes sense. My dad struggled a lot in the book. I was more of his parent than he was my parent. As a child, having adult responsibilities also takes away the purity of our youth. People that deal with parents that suffer with addiction, they're angry with their parents. The anger doesn't serve me. It does me no good because that then festers bitterness.
How were you able to keep your respect for your dad and your love for him as your father without judgment?
Whew, you are like just reading me my rights and like almost bringing me to tears.
What do I love about a grown-ass woman? There's so much to love.
Now give it to me.
She's unapologetic. She shows up in every space exactly who she is. She wedges the door open for other women to follow. I'm Shannon Allen, and you're listening to Grown Woman. Monique, I'm so grateful that you're here with me today.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. So honored.
Thank you so much. This is such a privilege for me. I want to jump over there, give you a hug, put you in my pocket, run out the back door.
The feeling is mutual.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So for anybody that doesn't know, Monique Rodriguez, founder, creator of Mielle Organics hair care, and author of On Its Way to Being a New York Times bestseller, The Glory in Your Story.
Thank you.
Incredible. And I'm so blown away by you and inspired by you. And it's one of the reasons why I wanted to have you here with me, because I think your story is one, not just of the ages, you know, this incredible story of you breaking the glass ceiling, but how you lead, how you've led as an entrepreneur, as a mom, as a wife, as a member of your community, as a daughter, and as a community builder. You know, it's like we wear all these hats. I was at church last week and the preacher was talking about the Trinity. He was wanting to do the story of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Right.
And it was like this really complex concept that people typically don't understand. It's like, are these three people? Are these three entities? Is it one? What is it, right? And so what I took away from it, and then, you know, I'm curious to hear your thoughts as well, is like, I'm a human being. I'm a woman. I'm also a mother. I'm a wife. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a daughter, a friend. I'm a part of a community. Within this vessel, we wear different hats.
Absolutely.
You do that so beautifully and with so much grace and humility. And when I think about you and your personal journey and what you represent for me in my life, it's like this unbelievable, humble servant of grace that is constantly trying to uplift women. Thank you for that.
Oh, wow. You're so sweet.
It's amazing.
I mean, like, you just gave me chills, like, just speaking that to me.
True.
And thank you for just affirming that. Because likewise, the feeling I feel for you is like, you're so inspiring. I mean, you have 5 kids, 5 boys. Yes. You are a mom, a wife, and an entrepreneur. And like, I'm just so proud of you for saying yes, right? I'm so proud of you for all of this, right? Being a servant, because you're serving people with healthier options for food. And, you know, just how you raise your family, I think it's just so amazing. You know, I've admired you for a very long time, and, you know, how we connected, and it was so genuine, you know, and we've been friends for what, maybe like almost 3 years now, and we connected on like social media.
Yeah.
Right. But that's just how genuine you are as a person. Your spirit is so like just refreshing, and your humility. And I'm just so honored to be here. I'm so honored to call you friend, and I'm so proud of you.
Thank you so much for that. And now our kids are friends.
Like, and they're like the same person.
The same person. They're like a boy and a girl version of the same spirit.
They like do the same thing. But, you know, I love the community that, you know, we're building, because it really takes a village. Yeah. Like, it takes a village to raise amazing, well-rounded kids. And I'm happy to be a part of your village. I'm happy to have your kids a part of my village.
Thank you.
And, we're just going to continue raising great humans.
That's the goal. That's got to be part of the goal, right?
Yes.
And so let me ask you a question about that, because it is a very important part of your story, and we'll get into it in your book, which I want. If you have not already purchased a copy of this book, do yourself a favor. You do not have to be an entrepreneur. You don't have to be a wife. You don't have to be a mom. You don't have to be someone that's from the south side of Chicago to understand your story.
Yeah.
But there's so many nuggets and gems that you drop in your book, and you're so vulnerable and transparent. And I really want to go all the way back, because I know people will buy the book and they'll read their story. I mean, you can see this is a very loved copy. I have read this book on the beach.
And I love that about you.
On the plane, in the hairdresser, while I'm working and answering emails in between Zooms. It's such an unbelievable story. You're such a young woman who has accomplished so much. But I want to take us back.
Yeah.
You take us back to young Monique growing up in the south side of Chicago. Talk to us a little bit about what it was like to grow up as young Monique.
Well, young Monique was very ambitious. She was always a dreamer. She was always a visionary. Young Monique also took on the parentification role very early on, from an emotional level and also physical level, because I talk about, my dad's struggle a lot in the book, and how I took on this role of I felt that I was more of his parent than he was my parent. And sometimes that, as a child, having adult responsibilities at a young age also takes away the purity of our youth. And so I felt like I grew up a little faster than most kids that were my age. But I also credit my ability to nurture and my parenting ability now was because I started so young, I felt with my dad.
Yeah.
And it made me more responsible, because I was seeing firsthand what drug addiction does to a family. My mom had to leave and go to work, so she was not home. I was a latchkey kid. So I had to be responsible. I had a younger brother, and I felt like I had to run the household. So I took on that responsibility role at a very young age. And, quite frankly, growing up in Chicago, I saw hustlers. I didn't see entrepreneurs. I saw people that went to work, or people that did what they had to do to make ends meet.
And that's still entrepreneurial.
It is still entrepreneurial. And, my dad was very entrepreneurial. He just didn't do it in the right way. So I feel like, I do get that spirit from him, and my mom actually, but my mom didn't quite dream big and see herself doing something differently. My dad, he did things in a very street way. And that's why I said he still had the mentality, but it wasn't the right way to go about things. And I saw things growing up as a child that I probably shouldn't have seen. My dad had me around prostitutes and drug addicts, and, it taught me to not judge people and how to, talk and have conversations with all different walks of life, because at that age, I didn't know that they were prostitutes, but I knew something was different and off with the environment that I was in. So I was exposed to things that I shouldn't have been exposed to. But, I feel that our childhood traumas, experiences all shape who we are as adults. And I feel like the reason that I have the tenacious spirit that I have, the determination, being able to have these large visions and dreams was because when I was younger, I used to take myself to a different place.
Tell me about that.
When my dad, my mom worked on every other weekend, and we would have to be at home with my dad a lot. And of course, he would be high or, whatever, and he would sleep the entire day. So it would be my brother and I at home by ourselves. And as kids, you have to do active things with your kids. You can't just let them sit around and just be idle, because, they can get into stuff. And I wasn't the kid that got into stuff. I was the kid that just sat there and dreamed. So I would just daydream in the corner, and my daydreaming would envision this other life and this other world, right, that I was in, because that's where I wanted to be. I didn't want to be in the current situation that I was in, but being able to have that vivid imagination contributes to how I have this vivid imagination now as an adult, and having these big vivid dreams to for instance, build Mielle. Mielle was a dream, and I saw where I wanted Mielle to go. And, that comes from me just being able to be that kid and take myself into another world and imagine the life that I wanted to have, because I didn't have that growing up, if that makes sense.
So when you talk about, and you talk about it in the book a lot in a very transparent way, Monique's super vulnerable in this book. I think conversations around struggles that we have in our childhood And I guess you could call it childhood trauma, but I don't want to put that label on you. It was your personal experience.
Yeah.
Concepts around addiction are really hard for people to talk about.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, there's a lot of shame. There can be.
Yeah.
There can be a feeling of hopelessness. There
Yep.
can be a feeling of like misplaced accountability. I think a lot about when you're a child, sometimes of addicted parents, you become an adultified child, just like
Yeah.
you're talking about, where
Yeah.
you have to take on adult responsibilities.
Yeah.
So you're growing up fast. You can maybe lose some of the childlike wonder and curiosity, this feeling of being safe and being rooted and grounded sometimes, and maybe even some abandonment issues because you were forced to live more like a young adult really than a child. And also you had to parent your brother, as you said, in some ways. What I think is fascinating about what you say in the book is that you still love your dad and you never judged him for the fact that he struggled with this disease of addiction, and that you still had really good days. And there were parts of his journey where he was completely drug-free.
Yeah.
And in those instances and moments with your mom and your brother, you had this glimmer of hope of what it would have been like for your dad to kind of stay on the path. And you had so much hope and desire in your own heart that he would be able to kind of stay on that path. But you never got down when he had a relapse. How were you able to keep your respect and admiration for your dad and your love for him as your father without judgment? Because it did affect your life.
Yeah. Yeah. Whew. You are like just reading me my rights and like almost bringing me to tears because it's so true. And I have to go back to the Bible. The Bible tells us to honor thy parents no matter what. So, and I wasn't well versed on the Bible growing up. So I don't even know where it came from. That's why I say that God has always had his hand on me and God has always spoken to me. But when I was younger, I didn't realize that it was God's voice. Because to your point, as a child, you can grow up being angry. And I know a lot of people that deal with parents that suffer with addiction are angry with their parents. And I just felt at a young age that the anger doesn't serve me. Like it does me no good to be angry to my dad because that then festers bitterness. And when you are bitter, you know, you don't have joy in your heart. And I was always a kid that was pretty happy and wanted to be, you know, joyous. I wanted to, you know, love the people that are in my space. I wanted to just be good and kind to the people that I'm around. And I just feel like being angry serves you no purpose. You know, it just festers up different things in our body and our nervous system reacts to that. And of course, I didn't know that when I was younger, but I just knew like it takes too much energy to be angry at him versus giving him grace.
And that's, I mean, that is a big lesson.
Yeah.
And for you to learn that as a child.
Yeah. And my husband even told me this. He's like, for you to have that mentality as a kid, like that's so rare. Yeah. Right. And I knew I was always interested in like health and psychology. So I learned early as well that like addiction is a disease. And sometimes I would actually go to like his rehab AA meetings and sit down and have conversations with some of the other addicts and some of his counselors. And that's where I was also able to kind of like learn how the struggle of addiction is so hard to kick. And, you know, I remember them reinforcing like, this is a disease, you know, this addiction is a disease, just like any other disease that anyone can have other than they made the choice to do it. But I'm sure when they made the choice to do it, they were doing it to either mask whatever pain that they've gone through. And they did not know that they would have this lifelong struggle with being addicted to the thing that they tried as a teenager, because my dad started at 14.
Wow.
So I'm sure in his young 14-year-old mind, he did not foresee himself being an addict. This was just something cool that he wanted to try because he was probably influenced by his friends. But I do think that he was still masking some type of pain.
And you've never talked about that.
And we've never talked about it. And I've asked him, and to be honest with you, I still deal with it today. And I go through my periods of, you know, just wondering why. And I even asked him, like, the least that you owe us is to tell us why. Why did you choose this over your children? And because I know that, you know, my dad, his psychology and his mindset is still of that 14-year-old, because once you start using a substance, the age that you start that's when your brain stops growing. He's still that 14-year-old boy, right? You know, and because everything that's still developing as you are a teenager, that's going to help you make decisions and critical think, that frontal lobe of your brain that functions that way has stopped growing because of the substance abuse. So he stopped growing at the age of 14. So I do realize that I'm still dealing with a 14-year-old, right?
And that's why you guys have a fun relationship.
And that's why because he's a fun person. He's a great person. He's a great human being. He has a good spirit, good soul, but he does have an illness. And I will never understand the mind of an addict and why he does not want to stop. But I also have realized that it's not like I can't want it more than he wants it for himself. I can't want it for him more.
And that's what a parent would say about their child.
Yeah.
We can't want our own child's success
more than they
want it for themselves. And so again, that goes back to this, and obviously I'm not a psychologist, but it goes back to this feeling of being an adultified child or a parentified child, where you've taken on this role of, I worry for my dad. I want to caretake for my dad. I want to understand why my dad chose this life.
Yeah.
I want to ask you this question because this is something that I've thought about a lot myself. Were you ever worried at any point that addiction can become a problem for you? Because in some instances, people say the disease could be hereditary or even genetic. And I don't know all of the science behind it, admittedly. But I know in my own life, I always wondered if, you know, everybody in my family pretty much drank. And so I always wondered, would drinking be a problem for me? So my solve was, I never had a sip of alcohol for like the majority of my life. And whole other side about that. But that was my way of protecting against that. I always said in my own mind, like, I broke the cycle for my children. Now, whether that's true or not, I'll never know. But that was a choice that I intentionally made. And then I got to a point when I was like 45 years old and I was like, so I'm actually not the kind of person that needs to really do anything specifically.
Yeah.
I thought I had like an addictive personality because if I like something, I want it all the time.
Yeah.
But then I realized that the stuff that I like is like green juice and, you know, a hot cup of coffee in the morning. And so spending time with loved ones. And so I realized, you know, it's okay for me to celebrate people on occasion and have a champagne toast with someone if that feels right in the moment for me. But it took me 45 years to get to that point where I trusted myself enough to be able to say that out loud. Did you ever, in your own life, seeing addictions up close, did you ever wonder if that could have been a part of your life?
Yeah, you know, that's a great question. And seeing addiction growing up, it actually pushed me further away from trying anything. You know, to your point, like I've never tried smoking weed. I've never smoked a cigarette. My dad also used to smoke. So it's like everything that he did, I was like, I don't want any parts of it. You know, I barely drink alcohol now. And I do think that sometimes people will have addictive personalities, but it's like, are you addicted to things that are healthy or, you know, things that are just like bad habits? So I never had the thought that like, oh, is this hereditary? Could this be passed down? I'm aware of, you know, his addiction, and his dad also had addiction with alcoholism. But I never wanted to speak like this is something that's hereditary. Like, to your point, I do feel like I have the power to stop and break generational curses by the choices I make and also how I parent my kids. So I feel like education is everything. So I probably over-educate my kids even now on the effects of drugs and, you know, when you're out with people, don't leave your drinks unattended, what drugs can do to you, and I'm like, you guys have a living example right now to see your grandfather and how drugs has affected his life. So I think that, and this is my personal opinion, a lot of things can be discouraged if we are educated and talking to our loved ones and our family. So my mom did a great job of doing that when I was growing up. She talks to me a lot about, you know, making the right choices, making the right decisions. It wasn't about drugs per se. But, you know, she would say sometimes here and there, like, well, if you try it one time, you're going to get hooked. Like, she would make like sly comments like that, but it always stuck with me. And also having the education of going to the AA meetings with him of like how drugs has affected all of the people that I was in this meeting with. And in my mind, I'm like, this is no way to live. So
it seems so obvious to you.
It was so obvious, right? So it wasn't a matter of like, is this hereditary? It's a matter of like, I'm going to stop this. Like, this is not going to be anyone else's story in my family. I'm going to break generational curses. I'm going to do something different. And I'm going to just bring awareness to myself and then also to my kids. When I started having kids, like, this is what happens when you do drugs, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And then about your mom, because your mom was a very big figure in your life as well. And the part of your book, again, everybody grab Monique's book. But like, all joking aside, like, your mom played a huge role in your life, and she loved your dad completely.
And she still does.
Really?
I believe so. She probably won't admit it, but I do believe she does.
Oh, wow. So their relationship really changed from what she probably had hoped it would be in the beginning.
Oh, I'm sure.
But they made 2 babies out of love, and she became the decision maker, the breadwinner, the safe space for you, your voice of reason, maybe too much when I see in the book.
Yeah.
But your mom, in what I took from the description of your mom, which was so interesting to me, because you're such a loving, nurturing, caregiving, warm, affectionate person.
Yeah.
You exude love.
Yeah.
If I had to say one thing about you, I'd be like, Monique is love. And the way you describe your mom in the book is that your mom actually, maybe because of the situation with your dad, had a boundary that she established to protect her own heart.
Yes.
So she wasn't an affectionate parent for you.
No, not at all.
How did a woman who comes from a mother that was not outwardly affectionate and still has issues with affection today be the physical embodiment of love in the world?
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, I feel that everything that I saw growing up in my parents that I knew wasn't normal, and I knew it wasn't normal or quote unquote kind of dysfunctional, it's because I also was exposed and saw other families and how they interacted. And, I think we talked about this before. I like being around like older people that are older than me, because I'm attracted to wisdom and I want to learn from other people. And I also want to add value to the relationship as well. But like, if I'm around people, positive examples, that just does something to my spirit. I'm like, oh, wow, look at how, I've told you this before. Like, I love how you and your family get together. Like, that, to me, that is so special. For me, family is everything.
Yeah, me too.
And I just knew, like, early when I started having kids, that I was going to tell my kids I love them every single day, because I didn't get that. So I feel like I just did the total opposite of how I grew up and what I saw. Is like, let me reverse that and do a whole 360, because I feel as a parent, you should be able to show affection to your kids. And now I'm to the point where I show affection so much that sometimes my kids don't even want to give it back, because they're like, oh, stop hugging me, right? But it's like,
You're suffocating me, Mom.
I'm probably an extremist in that aspect, but I'm like, I wanted to do something different, because a kid deserves to know that they are loved, they are cherished, they are nurtured, right? And that you will provide for them and you're going to protect them, and everything.
Mia needs you.
Oh.
Hi.
Hey. How are you?
Hey, what a nice surprise. Mia.
I saw him.
Not the babies.
Walking up.
Not the babies. I want to hug too.
Yes, I want to
Give me some divine.
Good. How are you?
My frat house.
You too.
Thank you. What's up? You good?
Yeah.
Okay, you having lunch? Perfect. I love it.
Did you drive here?
Yeah, I had to go pick up my suit for prom.
Oh,
Prom, y'all. We've entered a new
This is
phase.
Senior.
Senior. He graduates next week.
Oh,
Congratulations. My boy, so proud of you. Are you going to do what I asked you to do at home? Thank you.
Like,
Thank you. Thank you.
That was so cute.
So adorable. I'm like, what am I seeing over here? So you decided you're going to go in the opposite direction and surround your kids with love and affection, which is why they feel so safe in the world.
Yes.
To make real relationships and to be authentic and to show up who they really are in every space. And I think that is like the the gift of love, unconditional love for your kids, gives them the ability to feel safe in the world.
Yeah.
And I think when I think about your story in like the early formative years, I wanted to ask you, do you think, so your relationship with your mom now it's a good one?
Yes.
She's still single.
She's still single, yeah. And I actually have a good relationship with my dad too.
Right.
Like I set boundaries, because I do have to protect my mental health. I have to protect my peace. And he still does not listen. So,
He lives with your grandmother.
He lives with my grandmother. So I do have boundaries in place. But, our relationship, we don't have a toxic relationship. He still calls me randomly to check in. He still tells me he loves me. vice versa. And so it's great, but he still struggles.
Yeah. But it's beautiful that you don't express judgment. And I think that's the biggest part of the story that I think is so important. And it was such a good takeaway for me. It's like, you don't have a victim mentality in any part of your life.
No.
You absolutely have a growth mindset. I mean, you are a literal grown-ass woman.
Yeah.
In so many
Thank
ways.
You. Yeah. I like to say, like, you can either be a victim of your circumstances or an architect of your future.
Wow.
So
that's a bar.
Yeah. If I choose to not be a victim because God is not a victim. He has a victory. And in everything that we do, if I lean on him, I'm going to be victorious. So he's brought me from that childhood to being who I am today. And when I look back, I'm like, man, that's nothing but God.
Nothing but God.
Victory.
Yeah, won't he do it?
Won't he do it?
So when you think about this next step that you took in your journey, which was falling in love in middle school with your husband, Melvin, who's amazing, is an amazing human being. What was that like? What was that experience like for you? Did you recognize love? I mean, most people don't fall in love with their middle school boyfriend and then it turns out to be their soulmate, their husband, their business partner, all the things.
Everything, yeah.
Did you recognize him immediately? He's mine.
Not immediately. I think I met him when I was 12. Mm-hmm. So I had the middle school like crush. Like I was the new kid. He was kind of like the new kid. And I'm like, oh, this new kid on the block, he's like really cute, And, I did the little like, do you like me? Yes or no, when we used to write notes back in the day. Yes. And he ended up having a girlfriend, an 8th grade girlfriend. So it's like nothing. And that crush went away once he graduated because he's a grade older, right? And once he went to high school, that crush went away. So I was just average, like middle school, like crush. When we got older and he actually graduated high school, I didn't start dating him until I was 16, going into my senior year of high school. So for the time that he went to high school when I was in 8th grade, from the time when I was going into my senior year, we did not talk to each other. Like we would see each other and I thought that he was like the most arrogant because, all the girls were like throwing themselves at him and he thought he was cute. And I'm like, oh, this guy is just so full of himself. Like he gets on my nerve. Yes. But then, once we did start dating, I realized that his arrogance was really just confident. Like he's a very confident man. He can walk in any room, be himself and not care what anyone thinks. And sometimes I'm nudging him like, you can't do that. You like, stop. Okay. But he does not care. And, I think that's a great trait to have. And when I was younger, I did see qualities in him and I saw qualities in him that I wanted in my dad. If that makes sense, which is, what made me really fall in love with him. Because when we started dating, he had a 2-year-old niece and he had a 1-year-old sister. His dad ended up having another child. And the way that he interacted with his niece and his little sister, I felt it was like so like just amazing to see like a young man, like he was probably like 18 when his nieces was that young. And to see like how he kind of like took on a father role and how he would do anything for them. And he still does to this day. I'm like, yeah, if I have kids by this guy, like he's going to be a great dad. And really that's what made me fall in love with him. Just his characteristics of like how he admired his family, how he took care of his family. And granted, we both come from dysfunctional household. He didn't grow up with his mom present. Right. So, his dad pretty much raised him and, just seeing how he interacted with his sister, seeing how he interacted with his nieces, and how responsible he was at a very young age. He started working at UPS at the age of 16 and he worked there and just climbed the corporate ladder, until we started Mielle. And he just has such great potential. Like, obviously we didn't have a lot of money at the time, but I looked at his potential and he was a great listener. And when we started dating, we actually have broke up because he didn't have a cell phone. And I talked about this in the book. So he needed to get a cell phone in order to date me because I'm like, I have no way to get in contact with you. And it's like, are we dating or are we not? Because I barely talk to you. And when we broke up, he ended up coming back to my homecoming. I went to homecoming at my high school with my friends and he shows up and he's like, I got a cell phone. And for me, that was like, wow, you listen. And even to this day, like he's a great listener. Like I'll say things and forget that I say them. And next thing I know, he'll pop up with something that I mentioned that I wanted. And I just felt like those were like good qualities and characteristics, for him to be a great husband, great father, great family man, responsible, great listener. Not saying that he's perfect, because we do, and obviously in every marriage you have your, you know, disagreements and you bump heads at times. But what's most important for us is that our love surpasses all. And he showed me that at a very young age. Like, no matter what, no matter how much we may get into arguments when we were younger, he's like, I love you and my love is stronger than anything that, you know, we've argued about, and we can endure that. And he's just so committed to me, my family, our business. And I just love that about him.
Do you think? Yes, Melvin.
It's great.
It's amazing. He's amazing. God bless Melvin. And I'm so happy that you guys have each other.
Thank you.
You know, it's so crazy. I tell my husband sometimes, I don't know a lot of women that still are in love with their husbands.
Wow, really?
Yeah, because over time, you know, the stress of raising kids, having families, going through ups and downs, starting things working, things not working, failures, all that stuff, it starts to chip away at the soul of the relationship. And so, you know, I have this like still very intense love for him. And I'm so grateful. I think part of the reason is because we fell in love very young also. I was 20, Ray was 19. We've been together almost 30 years. And not to get too much into our thing, but you know, with his NBA career, he traveled a lot. There were some months where he was gone 21 days out of the month. So I always had this real longing for him. I always missed him.
Yeah.
And even though he's retired from the NBA now and he's home and he's raising kids with me and being the boys' AAU basketball coach and with our granddaughters, you know, like we have all these different roles, I still, it's crazy to say it out loud, I still have a longing for him.
That's so good.
And I still miss him, even when he's like, Shan, I'm going to go to the grocery store to get some stuff. I'll be back in 45 minutes. I'm like, yay, you came back and you got paper towels.
Yeah.
You know, it's really silly, but it's just, you know, I still do have this real passionate love for him. And I'm so grateful to hear that you and Melvin still have that thing, because I think it can get lost in the scope of raising a family, building a business, scaling a business, and all the complexities of building community that have. I wanted to ask you, when you talked about Melvin being ambitious and building his way up through UPS and recognizing in him that he wasn't just a great communicator, but he was so dedicated and committed to you and your family and your dreams and your goals. One of the things that I've learned is that for women, sometimes we get table stakes. It's like if our needs are being met, the basic needs, whether it's we're the sole provider or there's a partner, it's like, well, you should just be happy with that.
Yeah.
When women's desires are actually being met, that's when you really see women step into their personal power.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Do you think that we make mistakes sometimes, and especially now, where we look past someone because maybe they're not as successful as we would like them to be at this time? But if they're showing us ambition, should that be enough of an indicator light to give somebody a chance?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And you know what? I absolutely agree. You know, I've heard this long ago, like you marry and you date for love, right? And how you guys can grow together, how you guys are aligned, share the same values, purpose, mission, like not date for monetary reasons, which a lot of women may date for security reasons. I didn't want to date because I wanted security. I wanted to date and marry someone that I truly loved and I cared about. And I would just say, like, don't miss out on your potential husband because he doesn't check off all the boxes right now. You know, you want to be more concerned with, can I build a future? Can we build something together? And you'll know if you can build something together because you will be aligned in your values, in your mission, and your morals. And from very early age, Melvin and I knew that we were aligned. We were both dreamers. Like some of our dates would consist of driving around wealthy neighborhoods and saying, oh, we're going to have a house like that one day, right? We would talk about what it would look like when we had kids. So we would have these conversations and we just noticed that we were so just intertwined. And I feel like that even now, like our souls are so intertwined because we're so much alike, but yet different. Because I don't want my equal, right? I want someone where like he does have differences that I can learn from, and he can learn something from me, and we can evolve and grow. And we have done that. We have evolved into different people. We're not the same people that we were when we were 16 and 18, right? He's seen a different version of me in my 20s, in my 30s, and now in my 40s. And I've been able to see that as well. So we've been able to grow together. So I would say, like, can you grow with that person? Do you see potential in them where you can actually build something together? Like, money alone shouldn't be the sole reason why you choose to marry or date someone. Because at the end of the day, you want peace, right?
And what about the people that are sitting at home saying, well, that's easy for you guys to say because you have partners that are extremely successful?
But we were not always successful.
Right.
When I met Melvin, he was probably making $8 an hour at UPS. I was probably making around the same. So we were not successful when we started dating. And the thing is, the crazy part is, I've even heard people say, like, oh, they're together because she's successful. We were together since I was 16. I started Mielle when I was 30. Unless he had amazing foresight to see that, like, this woman was going to be so successful.
This 16-year-old.
This 16-year-old. Yeah, you're going to be a multimillionaire when you are 30 or whatever. Like, if he was able to have that foresight, I hope he can predict and tell me the rest of the future, right?
Right.
So, like, I've heard crazy things like that, but we didn't start this way. Like, we literally built something from scratch. We grew together.
We had a shared vision.
We had a shared vision, and we made a commitment that we are husband and wife before Mielle, we are parents before Mielle, and we are not going to let Mielle come in between what we have already established and had before Mielle was even thought of.
One of the things that I think a lot of times, because I have a few friends that are no longer married, and they've said to me, I wish I knew you when I was still married because I probably wouldn't be divorced now. And I'm like, why? Why are you saying that to me? I don't have like some magic blueprint for any of this. This is what works for us. I'm not saying it works for anyone else. And I have one friend in particular that said, it's because of how you guys show each other grace.
Yeah.
And I think for me, my husband shows me grace. He knows that I'm not perfect. I make mistakes all the time.
None of us are.
None of us are. And one of the things that he's always said, and this was so incredible because his parents were divorced, he says, you show me your worst and we'll deal with that together. That level of commitment and dedication, and again, grace, is something that is such a gift because I don't have to be perfect for him.
Yeah.
I don't have to be someone else. I don't have to wear a mask. He's seen me at my best. He's seen me at my worst.
Yeah.
And he's accepted me all of those ways. And I have to be able to share and extend that grace back to him.
Yeah.
This is a commitment we made together, a covenant in front of God for life. And I pray that we get to continue that journey together. I always tell him, like, I love you forever and ever, and even after that. I will look for you in every lifetime.
Oh my gosh, Shannon.
Because I will.
So special.
I will. my man.
Yes, you better talk that talk about your man. And that's the thing, I think that an older person told me this, like, marriage is really two people that really, really want to work together to make it work.
Right.
It can't be one-sided, right? And that means that you're willing to make it work despite the highs, the lows, the in-betweens, no matter what goes on. And Melvin and I, we've gone through a lot. I mean, we lost our son. And even at my lowest, how he still was committed to uplifting me and making sure, and I know that he was hurting as well, but I barely saw him hurt because he was so concerned about making sure that I was whole. Right. And that's love. And something like that can break and destroy a marriage.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about Milan.
Yes.
Please. I know that you and Melvin fell in love young and you started to build a relationship and a commitment, and you were a nurse.
Yes.
You started your nursing journey at the suggestion of your mom. Right. You had big dreams for yourself, and your mom was like, big dreams are great.
Yeah.
But you know what's great? A paycheck.
Yes. Every 2 weeks.
Every 2 weeks. You're smart. You're capable. You're suited for this.
Yeah.
And you wanted to make her happy, and you wanted to be successful, and you wanted to live in a place without lack.
Yeah.
So you were a great nurse. You were a labor and delivery nurse. Tell me a little bit about where you were and what you and Melvin were experiencing when you found out you were pregnant with your son?
Yeah, so when I got pregnant with my son, so I did labor and delivery for the first 5 years of my nursing career. And then the last 3 years, I transitioned to being a home health nurse because Mackenzie was born and I wanted more freedom and flexibility with my schedule. So I wanted to be home more with her. So working as a home health nurse gave me that autonomy.
So you already had 2 baby girls at home.
So I had 2 baby girls at home. And I decided to, before I had Mackenzie, I decided to go back to school to further my career and become a nurse practitioner. In the middle of my nursing program, I got pregnant with her. So that was like, okay, well, I'm not going to clearly finish school because she was born prematurely and I want to focus on my baby. So 3 years later, as I was working as a home health nurse, I decided, I'm done with having kids. Let me try to go back and pursue and become a nurse practitioner, which is what I was doing when I got pregnant with her. Had the support of my husband, and I enrolled back into the nursing program. And then I found out that I was pregnant that January with my son. And it wasn't a planned pregnancy. And it was like, this just came out of nowhere. And well, not really, but
How did Melvin feel when he found out you guys were pregnant with a third?
Excited. We were excited. So when we found out, it was kind of like a surprise because we were not planning for it, but we were excited, to bring another child into this world. And then we found out that it was a boy, and that was just like even more like exciting. He was super excited that he was going to have a son. And I carried him for 8 months, and everything was great during the pregnancy.
Felt good.
Felt good, had no issues.
Normal doctor's appointments, ultrasounds.
Everything was normal. And
you knew what to look for because this had been your expertise.
Yes.
You were a labor and delivery nurse for over 5 years. Nurse.
Thought I did everything right. Thought I knew everything about labor and delivery. And I did know a lot. And that's why when it happened and I had the uterine rupture, I knew exactly what was happening, which was the most tormenting thing ever when I was en route to the hospital because I knew this is bad.
So 8 months, how many weeks is that?
So I was 33 or 34 weeks.
Which for some people, 33, 34 weeks could get you very close to a viable pregnancy.
Absolutely. You can take that baby home if, everything is good even at 34 weeks.
Yeah.
They give steroids and the baby's doing fine. The baby can go home. So he definitely could have went home at that 34 weeks mark. And
so what happened to you? Tell me about the uterine rupture because I don't know anything about that.
Yeah. So when I had Mackenzie, she was an emergency C-section because I had a placenta abruption. And that's also, rare because usually placenta abruption happens when either you're hit in the stomach, an accident happens, or if you're a drug user. None of that happened. Okay. I was getting Mia ready because we all have the same birthday, myself, Mackenzie, and Mia.
Which is amazing.
It was Mia's birthday. I was getting her ready for her party at her preschool, and then I just started bleeding out of nowhere. So I had to be rushed to the hospital. They did an emergency C-section, and because of that high risk of having a placenta abruption, the doctor had to cut my uterus vertical. I have a bikini cut, but once you do the bikini cut, once they hit the uterus, the fastest way to get the baby out is to just slice the uterus up and down. And that saved her. But it also put me at risk for any subsequent pregnancies that I had after that because the uterus was cut from the top down vertical and not transverse, that when you contract, the uterus contracts from the top.
Okay.
So every time you contract, it puts stress on the uterus and it puts stress on that scar. So if it puts stress on that scar can open up and burst. And that is what a uterine rupture is.
Did you ever have a feeling during your pregnancy with Milan, throughout any of this period, did you have anything in the back of your mind, okay, I had this placenta issue. I need to be thinking about this, that my uterus is in a little bit more fragile state than it was with Mia? You did?
I did. And I even brought it up to the doctor. And that's why, I wanted to bring awareness to this as well because my doctor blew me off. And he was like, oh, you'll be fine. We're going to schedule your C-section. And obviously I'm not going to live in guilt, but I dealt with it for a long time. I should have spoke up more to advocate to have a C-section earlier instead of allowing the doctor to say, oh no, we're going to schedule you for next week. I was in the hospital, I was having contractions, and then I went home. They discharged me home. And I fought with the fact of like, oh, I should have stayed in the hospital because they could have just delivered him there. So I went home, and then like a week later, I started contracting again. And the more you contract, the more it rips at that scar. So the week later that I came home from the hospital, the scar probably couldn't take it anymore. It was already weak. And I remember Melvin had went out to a family function, so he wasn't at home. As soon as he came home, I felt like a burst in my stomach. And like I knew then like what was happening.
And what did you feel? Were you in terror?
I was terrified. And I was in so much pain. And I remember telling myself like, oh my gosh, I don't want to get pregnant again because it was so painful. And I remember thinking like, I just hope everything's okay. When we got to the hospital, they put my baby on the monitor, through the monitor in my belly, and his heart rate was so low. And the doctor wasn't there. And I remember asking and yelling like, where's the doctor? His heart rate is low. Like the doctor needs to come now.
And they're ignoring you.
They were, I wouldn't say they were ignoring me. They called the doctor, but the doctor was at home. This was not a high-risk hospital. So they did not have like a 24-hour OB doctor that was on call that can do the C-section. Because I worked at high-risk hospitals, usually when a patient comes in, there's an emergency, there's an on-call doctor that can come in and hurry up and just do the C-section to get the baby out. This hospital was not equipped for that.
Okay.
And he had to come from home. So the time that it took him to get from home to the hospital, too much time had passed. And when he finally got there, my son had no heart rate. And at that point, it was too late.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Worst possible scenario.
Of course. It was terrible. It was terrible.
We read all the time about maternal health rates
Yeah.
for Black women. And it's like, the thing that bothers me the most about this story is you were already your best advocate because you know this work.
Yep.
Think about the average person that doesn't know this
doesn't
work.
know. Yeah.
That is afraid to advocate for themselves, that is hushed and quieted down and silenced and made to feel like what they're asking for is too much, or where they're treating you like the pain that you're feeling. You don't feel pain. Like that's their big thing in the hospital sometimes, right? Like, oh, well, your pain tolerance is higher. There's all these tropes and all this racism that happens for women of color when they're in the hospital. And you lost your son.
Yeah.
And in that moment, what did you cling to?
So in that moment, first I was angry.
Yeah.
Honestly, I was angry with the hospital. I was angry with the doctor. And I believe I went through all the grieving stages. Mm-hmm. And I went through the point of like asking why. Like, why did this happen to me? I did everything I was supposed to do. And then I had to learn to, accept.
Because Milan didn't pass away at first. He was on life support for a period of time.
Support, but there was so he was on life support because we were not ready to let go.
Yeah.
We were still holding on to hope. And his body was there, but he was not there. Like
Did you hold
had
him?
No functioning. Yes, I was able to hold him. And, we have pictures, and it was so hard for me to even talk to this about his situation with my girls. I didn't even know how to tell them, like, your brother's not coming home.
Oh.
So yeah, it was really hard. But I do cherish the moments that I was able to spend with him. I remember going into the hospital when he was on life support, and I would read Bible scriptures to him. And I just felt like, even though he was here for a very short time, his purpose was so big and so impactful because he brought me closer to God.
And that wasn't a part of your childhood. That's one of the things I remember from the book.
Exactly.
You did not grow up in the church.
No.
Is this through losing your son? Is that how you found God?
That's how I
Was
found
that
God.
your breakdown before your breakthrough?
Yep.
And
Because God was the only spirit that I could hang on to.
that was it. You would have died yourself
Yeah.
without God. And even though you had Melvin, and I'm sure your mom was there,
Yes.
and I'm sure your dad and your brother were present, and you have a whole community of people that love you, you clung on to Jesus.
Yep. Because Jesus is the only one who can save me.
The way, the truth, and the life.
Going through that. And I knew that reading his word and his scripture that I was going to come out on the other side of this. And I knew that I still had purpose in me, because having a uterine rupture is also very risky for the mom. The mom can lose her life. And I was clinging on to hope and anger, but also just very happy and grateful that I'm still here.
Amen.
And I'm here present and I can raise my 2 girls.
Yes.
You know, so even though it was painful, there was a gift and there was purpose within that pain.
Oh, I'm so grateful you're here.
Yeah.
And I think, the magic in this story is that you went through hell. I think about this sometimes, like in life, what is the worst thing that can happen to us? And I think there's 2 things. For me personally, where I sit, and obviously everyone's feeling about this is going to be different. That something would happen to your child when you're a mother. That's number 1. For me, number 2 is that something would happen to me and I wouldn't be able to take care of my kids. And you dealt with both. You dealt with both worst case scenarios in that moment. And when you clung on to faith and to be able to say, but I'm so grateful and I'm so happy because I'm here and I get to take care of my girls. It's like so inspiring.
Yeah.
So inspiring. We talk about post-traumatic growth. This idea that you can go through an extreme trauma, and for a lot of people, they give up.
Yeah.
They and there's no judgment on that, because some people just are like, you know what? Well, I'm just gonna check out emotionally. I may physically be present, but I'm emotionally not present because I can't. I don't have the wherewithal. I don't have the will to be physically present. But then there are people who experience what's called post-traumatic growth, where they get to the other side of that and they're stronger, they're better, they're more focused. And then they inspire people around them to keep going. Yeah. Has that been a big part of your mission?
Oh, absolutely. And, obviously you probably know, like being a public figure, you also deal with a lot. You deal with a lot of criticism. You deal with a lot of, scrutiny. And people ask me all the time, like, how do you handle it? How do you deal with it? I've already been through worse. There's nothing that anyone can say or do that can break me down even further. Like,
yes.
I know that I'm walking in my purpose. I know that God has called me to do the work that I'm doing. I know that he's called me to be this resilient person that can stand in the face of adversity and look adversity in the face and slap it and keep going. Because
you gotta try a lot harder to break this one.
Because I know whose I am and I know what he's done for me before. And I know that no matter what, he will always do it again. Again and again. So through this process of going through the worst possible scenario, but coming out on the other side grateful, you experienced a personal physical representation of trauma where your hair started coming out in clumps. Because after losing Milan, you were shedding. You were going through an emotional and a physical loss through all your stages of grief. When you started losing your hair, what was the thought that was in your mind that said, I'm a nurse, I know organic ingredients, I know about products, I have to heal my hair. Yeah. I need to start feeling like Monique again. I'm just going to get in my kitchen sink and I'm going to start mixing. Yeah. You're like, where does that come from?
I want to know.
Yeah. I mean, obviously when you go through postpartum and you go through like the normal shedding of postpartum hair, because your hair grows when you're pregnant. And then once you lose all of that hormones and that blood circulation, then the hair goes through like the shedding process. And I started being real in tune with just hairstyles on social media and looking at like different products and how they worked and performed. Like I just went down this rabbit hole of just like this interest, and I was so intrigued. I've always wanted to be in the beauty space. So this passion was just re-emerged going through like grief and allowing my grief to open up this creative outlet, because it helped me get my mind off of going through what I was going through with my son. Yeah. And so I was seeing all these beautiful curls, and I remember like, oh, when I was younger, I used to have like these beautiful curls. What happened to my hair? Yeah. And I wanted to restore my hair. And for me, that was my little project, nursing my hair back to health and finding different ingredients and researching formulations and what worked and performed on like textured hair, curly hair. because there's so many products out there. But I felt that as a curly hair girl, I was using all these products and nothing was working because I didn't understand how to use the products, the right technique, and porosity, hair education, knowing what was my curl type and, you know, how to properly deep condition my hair. So there was so much information that I was learning going down my rabbit hole. And I said, I feel like this would be so beneficial to women. Like, other women need to know and understand how to maneuver their hair, because maybe if I'm helping myself, I can help someone else. And that's how it started. It started with me problem solving, going on social media, showing how I was helping my own hair, and people saw like the results. They saw like the transitioning. I went from like having severely heat damaged, dry, brittle ends to now having like this beautiful hair that people admire. And I started sharing what I did to get there.
All on social media.
All on social media.
And you were learning this from scratch. Nobody taught you how to do this.
Nobody taught me how to do this. But having like a science background, it helped me understand, you know, human anatomy, the body, our scalp, how the hair grows, the cycle in which the hair grows, and then what ingredients are safe and effective to use on our skin. So I started with like very natural ingredients.
What was the first product that you made in the kitchen?
The first product was a deep conditioner, and I mixed other deep conditioners that I bought off the shelf, and then I started putting like egg and mayo, avocado, because this was my experimentation. It was trial and error. I was putting it on my hair, get it in the shower, and was having egg frying in my hair because I realized that food molecules don't penetrate the hair shaft. Yes, I was thinking I needed the protein because I knew that, you know, hair strength comes from protein, but it's not actually the protein that are in eggs. It's actually the amino acids that are extracted from protein extracts. And that's what I figured out that I needed to formulate and put in products to actually get the protein that can be absorbed in our hair shaft, not the protein from food, because it doesn't absorb. And I was very intrigued by that. I was like, oh, this is all these years that our grandma has been telling us to put mayo and eggs in our hair, and avocado is really not doing any justice because we're not extracting the elements that can actually be absorbed in our hair cuticles.
Right.
And I was just so intrigued by it, and I just started sharing it. And
so you started sharing it, and then you end up slowly but surely creating products in your garage.
Yes.
Getting Melvin on board, and he brought all of his logistical experience from UPS and all of his business experience and entrepreneurial experience and corporate America experience. And you had all of your science background and your research and this new learning that you created.
Yeah.
And you built a company called Mielle, Mielle Organics. And I've always been a fan. I've always bought your products. I'm like a real Mielle nerd.
Thank you.
I have my favorites, Babasu and mint.
Oh, that's like a day one game changer.
Yeah, rosemary oil, avocado. I love the seaweed line.
Thank you.
That's my summertime line because my hair changes vis-a-vis temperatures because I also have curly hair. I have textured hair. So you built this company basically in your kitchen and then in your garage, and you expanded it. And before you know it, and I know it was years, but it really is a unicorn. Yeah. It really is a unicorn within, let's call it 7 years.
Yeah. So in 7 years, we did our private equity raise, which was historical. And then 18 months later, we partnered with P&G. And that, so yeah, pretty much like 8.5, 9 years. It took me to accomplish my ultimate goal of, you know, being acquired and having an exit. So, which was the largest exit for a Black woman.
My inspiration, y'all. This woman right here, how she came to the hair industry, fast food. When I think I can't do it, when I'm on my last, I don't know how I'm going to make payroll. I'm like, Monique.
Yep.
She set the tone. She set the trend. She set the intention. She took no fucking prisoners. She doesn't believe in the word no. I don't know if you know that that's what you do for women of color.
Oh, thank you.
For Black women, this is
that is
what
the goal.
You do.
That is the goal.
Yes.
That's why I wanted to write this book, because to your point, you're a unicorn.
Yes.
We don't want unicorns. We want this to be normal.
Yeah.
So I want to create more. Normal's not going to get it done.
First they call you crazy.
Yeah.
Then they call you for advice.
Yep.
That's the part.
Yeah.
And so the glory in your story is your book.
Yes.
From your inception all the way to breaking the glass ceiling with Mielle Organics, with Mielle, and doing your big exit to P&G. And I think it's important for people to know, and I want them to read the book because I want them to really hear this from you. Exiting to a big company is the goal.
Yes.
That's the goal. That's the goal. And here's why. Because it creates generational wealth. It uplifts communities.
Yes.
And now we can take what we've earned, what we've learned, what we've built, what we've scaled, the dream that we've executed on and creating the thing that we existed. And we can actually change the trajectory of how our communities live.
Yes.
The thing about this that we're not talking about, that we haven't said, but that people at home already know about, is that for business to scale, it needs capital.
Infrastructure and capital.
Infrastructure and capital, and very, very smart people.
Yep.
Very, very smart people. And in order to do that, you need investment.
Yep.
But if you guys knew this, and Monique, I know you know the numbers even better than I do. If there's a 100% pie on this table, 98% of this pie is going to go to male founders. Okay?
Yeah.
98% of this pie, of this round table, is going to go to male founders. And of the tiny slice of the 2% pie, 0.02% of investment capital is going to go to Black women. But we're the largest group of small business owners in the country.
And the fastest growing.
But 0.02%
Yeah.
is the kind of investment we got. Monique is in the 0.02, y'all.
Yeah.
So the goal is to scale these companies and exit these companies in a major way. So the Moniques of the world and the Shannons of the world can invest in other Black women's businesses.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, it's not going to get done.
If we don't invest in us.
If we don't invest in us. And so that's why I think your story is so powerful. And there's so much glory in your story. Because you set out to accomplish something that everybody else would say is impossible, and you did it anyway. And now on top of it, you're using your platform, you're using your resources, and you're using the experience and your capital to invest in other women of color's businesses.
Absolutely.
And so I am so grateful to you, and I'm so grateful for you not being afraid of success.
Yeah, because that is a thing.
It's a thing. It's absolutely a thing.
Yeah.
Before I let you go, because I know you have a very, very hectic schedule, and you've made way too much time for me already, and I'm so grateful.
any time for you.
Thank you. Before I let you go, I want to ask you two questions. It's a two-part question.
Yeah.
One, when you think about your life and you think about who shows up for you and who's shown up for you, good times and bad times and everything in between, who is the grown woman that you turn to?
Oh my gosh, the grown woman that I turn to that shows up for me. You know, outside of my mom, obviously my mom is number one.
Yeah.
And then I would have to say one of my closest friends is Marilyn, that I can go to her and talk to her about anything, whether it's good or bad. And she will always stop what she's doing and pray for me. I need women like that, that are encouragers, that will stop what they're doing, pray for me when the times are hard, even when the times are great. We're going to praise God together.
Amen.
Right? And then I would
and glorify his name.
And glorify his name in everything.
Give him all the glory.
Yes. And my daughters, even though they're young, like they're still growing, you know, there are things that I will share with them just so they can learn from my experiences, because I want to be that for them as well. Just like as my mom was for me, as my friend is for me, like I also want to pass that over to them. And I want them to feel like I'm that person for them, because they are that for me.
I was going to say, the other thing that I love about how you parent in the short 3 years that we've known each other is that even though you're a senior to your girls and you are their mother, you're not one of these moms that's like a friend to your girls, although you do have a real friendship.
Yeah.
You do.
Yeah.
You're the kind of mom that is open to learning from the girls.
Absolutely.
Because it's an ever-changing world. And like how you support Mia with her social media and with the things that she's working on in her small business, and how you support Mackenzie and all of her sports and all of her new accomplishments and moving to a new place and making new friends. We don't know everything.
Yeah.
Like when I get in a bind, I'm like, guys, my 13-year-old Whiston, I'm like, Whis, come do this for mommy. I don't have a clue how to do this. And they're like irritating me, like, Mom, what's wrong with you? But we can learn from our children. And I think sometimes we get into this situation where it's like, I'm the mom.
Yeah.
You know, you're not going to tell me anything. But at the end of the day, it's like having that open dialogue and having that open conversation is super important. I think that's
so important.
You do that so well.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that I would ask you is,
thank you.
You're welcome. What does it mean to you to be a grown woman?
What does it mean to me to be a grown woman? It means to be a Proverbs 31 woman, a representation of God, raising my family with God-aligned values, being there for my husband, being there for my community, being able to gather all my crops, run my household, run a business, and still show up to be vulnerable and submissive for my husband, because at the end of the day, he still leads and he's a protector. He's the head of the household, and I can do that because he's a great leader. But being able to walk in grace in my femininity and being able to still run this amazing company, lead with empathy and compassion, because I feel like as women, sometimes when we take on this entrepreneur CEO role, we take on masculine traits.
You can become hardened.
You can become hard. And being a Proverbs 31 woman is remembering how God created me to be that nurturer, right? To embrace my soft side, to not conform to being this masculine figure, because I can't be that nurturer. I can't be the mom who I am for my girls if I am in my husband's role. And I feel that when you are able to merge femininity with purpose and passion, you have a powerful, dynamic, grown woman.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Again, I'm so proud of you.
Thank you.
You are an amazing soul,
Thank
and you have done just an amazing job today. So I'm super happy for you. So happy to support you. Anything you need, I'm here.
You know, and that's so you, Monique. Nobody else knows this, but I'm going to say this, and I hope it doesn't embarrass you. But
No.
when I was on the verge of saying yes to doing Grown Woman, I was very conflicted because I felt like I've been so comfortable being anonymous and really focusing on my husband and kids and running Grown and getting ready to launch our franchise. And Monique invited me out to coffee, and I said to her, you know, I think I've been hiding and I'm thinking about doing this thing, but I'm really nervous about it. And it's very unlike me because I'm a risk taker.
Yeah.
I love, if I come with an idea or I have something that I want to do, I just do it. You know, unapologetically, unabashedly, with 100% of who I am. I am myself in every room. God has blessed me with that. And I'm an idea person first. But I was really nervous about this, putting myself out there in this way. And when you and I met, you said, when's the last time you've been down the bread aisle? And I said, yeah. And you were like, how many different kinds of just white bread are there?
Yeah.
And if I had gotten intimidated by the hair care aisle or the textured hair care aisle in any one of these stores, I never would have started Mielle.
Yep.
There is room for all of us. Do your show. And then you said the next part, and this was the part, I'm going to get emotional when I think about it. You said, do it. And then you said, and I'm there for you. I am there to support you. And that's who you are. And you are a grown woman, and I'm so incredibly grateful for you in my life.
Oh, I'm grateful for you too. Thank you so much.
Monique Rodriguez, everybody. The glory in your story.